Hi, today we are in San Francisco with BranchOut. Rick, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Rick Marini. I'm the founder and CEO of BranchOut, and I've been an entrepreneur for the last 15 years out here in Silicon Valley. I've
Great.
started 3 companies. Tickle.com was the first one back in 1999, and we grew that to be the largest personality testing site online. We sold that to Monster in '04 for $100 million.
Great.
And then I started a second company called Superfan, which built Facebook apps and social games. And we pivoted that over to BranchOut, which is the largest professional network leveraging Facebook with about 800 million professional profiles.
Great. Let's talk briefly about the business model of BranchOut. How did it work in the beginning, and have there been any changes to the business model over time?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster with BranchOut. There's plenty of changes as in any startup. You know, BranchOut really started as a way to leverage your network within Facebook, which tends to be your friend network, people that you're close with, and leverage that for professional purposes. Typically, people would use it for recruiting or finding a job. Or sales, trying to build your network. And BranchOut really grew quickly early on because it's a network effect business. The larger the network, the more powerful it becomes. So you want to invite all of your friends. And you know, people on Facebook have an average of about 350 friends, and they were inviting everyone. So we grew quickly, and that's how we were able to get to 800 million members. And you know, on the business model side, so really we focused on recruiting. So giving recruiters special tools and access into the database so they could identify who they knew at different companies. And it's not just who they know, it's who their friends knew. So it was really being able to go with that kind of 6 degrees of separation to be able to leverage a giant database of 800 million people.
Okay. And how did you reach the first, let's say, 10,000 or 100,000 members?
Yeah, so a lot of that is really leveraging your own network, right? Inviting everyone that you know to join the service. And luckily for us, we knew people who had big networks, right? So some of the early people who started to really spark that growth, they invited their network, and luckily for us, it was a very influential network. And you know, people who had big Facebook followings and Twitter followings, and that really started to get the word out there quickly. So really, you know, like many entrepreneurs, you invite everyone that you know, friends, family, anyone you've ever met, and try to get them to use that service early on.
Okay, great. You told us in the talk before that you have so many learnings over the years as being an entrepreneur for 15 years. Can you share some of your learnings with us?
Sure. It's been a roller coaster for 15 years. I love being an entrepreneur, but this stuff is really hard. It's really hard. It's kind of like being an actor in LA, I think, where, you know, everybody wants to be Brad Pitt or Julia Roberts and make 20 million a movie and all that stuff, and everybody up here wants to be Mark Zuckerberg or Larry or Sergey. But the reality is, a lot of people waiting tables in LA, and a lot of people that, you know, try to be an entrepreneur and never achieve the success of a Mark Zuckerberg. But the reality is, there's nothing I'd rather do. I love being an entrepreneur. It's great. You just have to know what you're getting into, because it really is hard. I mean, you can never turn it off. You're always thinking about your business. You're always pitching your business. You can never shut it off. I mean, when you go home, you're probably not actually going home directly. You're going to some tech event, especially if you're here in the Bay Area where there's tech events every night. So I've had the highest highs and lowest lows in the same day, right? I mean, you have to have a real stomach of steel to ride the roller coaster and just understand what you're getting into.
You have been recently acquired by Hearst. Any learnings that you get from that kind of exit route?
Yeah, so we were just acquired this week by Hearst, so this is great timing for this discussion. We're very excited. Hearst is a world-class company, and we are going to have the chance to act as entrepreneurs within Hearst. They've created a new digital product group that I'm heading up, so that's wonderful. We have the security of Hearst, but still as acting as entrepreneurs. So that's been great. You know, I think every entrepreneur has the dream of taking a company public. The reality is that most successful companies end up getting acquired, like we just did this week, before they ever get to the IPO. It's really hard to get to the IPO, and you know, it's it's bittersweet, right? Because you love having the control and responsibility as an entrepreneur, but you also know you are working towards building a company of real value. And again, either it's an IPO or more likely an acquisition. And then, there is that bittersweet moment of, now I'm kind of giving up my baby.
Yeah.
Luckily for us, we get to continue on with Hearst and manage that. But to be honest, we are very excited to be part of Hearst. I mean, like I said, it's a roller coaster, and it feels good to be part of a great company in the end.
A lot of young startups or maybe single developers try and think about, okay, let me build an app for another platform like iOS or Android or Facebook, whatever. And you did it by yourself, yeah? I mean, you used Facebook for your services. Are there any learnings, what you need to consider as an entrepreneur when you make your business model so much dependent on another platform?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, with BranchOut's growth, there's no way we could have ever achieved those kinds of numbers without Facebook. But there's also the downside that you don't control that platform. So on the early days of BranchOut, we grew quickly. I mean, we are adding 400,000 new users every day.
Wow.
With zero marketing, just for free. Now we were leveraging, the Facebook network to the fullest. I mean, we really did a good job with that. But then Facebook made some changes later that made it tough for every app developer to be able to achieve anywhere near that kind of growth. And that's something that's a really good lesson for other entrepreneurs, that when you develop for another platform, you don't control that. You don't control the rules, and they can change rules at any time, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or Apple or Google or whoever it is. That said, when you're developing for mobile, you've got to develop for iOS and Android. You have to. I mean, that's 90% of the market. I think the two of them combined. And Android is interesting because you can get to market quicker, but you're also developing for a lot of different platforms, a lot of different phones. But at the end of the day, mobile to me is the future of communication, of technology. So for people who are developing apps for mobile, you've got to be on both iOS and Android, and you've got to kind of play within the rules of Apple and Google. And luckily, both of those companies, I think, have done a good job at building real solid developer ecosystems.
I mean, you started several companies. Is there any specific process behind that how you select your next business venture?
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people like to start companies based on their personal passion. And I think that's great, but your personal passion also has to translate into your ability to raise money from investors, to be able to attract employees, and to be able to have a real exit later, because investors are investing for a return. So I think there's a lot of people that want to start the next music site or sports site, and sometimes those work. Pandora and Spotify and others have worked. But at the end of the day, I think finding something that you can build that, for me, can change millions of lives in a positive way is where my passion is, right? And if you can find something that gets you fired up every day, whether it's a personal passion or it's just something that, again, can have that kind of global impact, that gets me excited. And being able to work with great employees and great advisors and investors, when you bring all that together, that to me is what's exciting in starting companies.
And did you start with some kind of a long list and then try to shorten up and then come up with 3 or 4 great business ideas, and what you need to decide for 1 or 2, or how do you go for starting a company?
So for my first company, Tickle, we started that because I was at Harvard Business School, and my classmate James Currier, we took the Myers-Briggs test, and we realized, this was back in 1997, we started the company in 99 upon graduation, but we realized, and this is years ago, that no one had ever done this online, right? So that was just kind of this spark of, wow, we can bring all these quizzes online. With BranchOut, that was by accident. I think a lot of companies are started by accident, where somebody had asked me for an introduction to a Facebook friend, and I forgot which one of my friends worked at that company. So I asked one of my engineers to build me a little widget that could go through all my Facebook, because I've got over 2,000 friends, and just going through manually would have taken too long. And then we had the spark of, wow, this is really powerful. A lot of people would use that. So I think it's probably often companies are started based on either your personal itch you need to scratch, like for BranchOut, or you just see this big opportunity where you're like, wow, no one's done that before. It was a lot easier to do that back in 1999 when the internet was a lot younger than it is today. But I think those are definitely good ways to start companies. Of I have an itch that needs to be scratched, and if it's something that impacts a lot of other people, there may be a business.
Are there any other learnings or advice, or maybe even mistakes that you did that you can share with our readers?
So, in terms of advice, one of the things that I think young entrepreneurs or people who want to be entrepreneurs should think about is that when you start your first company, if you've never worked in an entrepreneurial setting, you're making it really difficult for yourself. Like, my advice would be go work in a startup, especially one that's got some funding, an A or B round of funding, and go learn from a great entrepreneur. Go see the mistakes they make, see the wins they have, the successes, and learn from them. So instead of going back for your MBA for 2 years like I did, go work for a great startup for 2 years, take that learning, and then go start your company. But I think without having those learnings, you're going to make mistakes that someone else could have made on their dime while you were learning and earning a wage. So that to me is one of the big things that I think young entrepreneurs should do. Another that's just really general that has helped me in my career is to do a couple things that are really simple. They're simple, but you got to work at them. One is work harder than everyone around you, and that's something that I did early in my career. I worked a lot of hours, and I did that so I could soak up as much knowledge as I could, and also be seen as the go-to guy. Number two, have a good attitude. Attitude goes a long way. People who have a good attitude that are willing to work hard, those are the people who get mentored by the best people. Because I want those people on my team. I want to hire those people. So, smart people with a good attitude that are willing to work hard can go really far. Whether that's professionally or personally or whatever it is. Simple advice, just do that and you're going to go pretty far. If you want to be an entrepreneur, go find a great company, learn there for 2 or 3 years, take all that, and then you're in a better position to start a company.
What advice would you give to a person who wants to start a company, is now in a safe job, was working, etc.? Would you rather think, okay, quit your job, start a company, or would you rather advise him to build a company on a side and on the weekends, for example?
If the company they work for allows them to do that, then that's not a bad idea to start. And the reason for that is that quitting your job, especially if you have any kind of family obligations, if you have a wife or children or a house, I mean, that's a scary thing to just say, I'm going to stop working in my safe, secure job and start a company. Testing some ideas, seeing if there's any traction, because sometimes there are great ideas that just don't have the execution behind them. And the flip side of that is, can you really execute if you're doing this part-time? And that's what I would go back to. It really depends on your situation. If you have the ability, if you have the financial freedom to say, I don't have to do this job, I can go and take a chance, then go ahead and take that chance. If you don't have that flexibility or freedom, and if the people that you want to hire don't have that as well, maybe you do this on nights and weekends if your employer allows you to do that, just to see if there's some traction. As soon as you start to see some real sparks that this is going to work, that's when you say, okay, I'm going to go for it 100%. Because it's not just you that is potentially leaving a job, it's the people that you need to attract to come work with you. And that's scary, because when you as a CEO take that responsibility on, not just for myself and for my family, but also that of all these other people, you're now responsible for all of their families, making sure you hit payroll and making sure that the company's going in the right direction. That is a bigger responsibility than I think people who haven't been an entrepreneur realize. It's scary, and every CEO should take that seriously, because people are putting their faith and their families trust in you.
And what would be the right point to raise outside money? Because I mean, a lot of people also try to bootstrap. And when should they stop bootstrapping and maybe even fuel the company with outside money? Yeah,
there's typically 2 times early on when you raise money. One's with just a whiteboard and an idea, which you're going to raise at a lower valuation because you haven't proven it out. And then the other would be when you have real traction. Maybe you bootstrapped it, maybe you brought some angel money in, and then you've got traction, you can go raise at a much higher valuation. Of course, the scary part is, well, what if I don't ever get there, right? And so a lot of people just want to go out there and raise, a couple $100,000, maybe $500,000 just to get going. And I think that makes sense. I'm going to go back to what I said a minute ago, which is if you can do something kind of on the side to prove out that there's something there, that could be the time to start to raise some angel money.
Okay.
Do like a convertible note, make it really simple, and raise maybe $500,000, so, something in that range, just so you can get yourself and maybe a couple engineers on board and start to build towards a more robust product, get some traction, and then you can go off for the Series A. Especially if you've never been an entrepreneur before, it's really hard to go into a big Series A with just an idea in the whiteboard because you don't have a reputation here yet. You haven't built that up. For more experienced entrepreneurs that have maybe had an exit or two and have a well-known brand in Silicon Valley, they can often go right into the Series A because the VCs have a relationship with them.
Okay, Rick, thank you very much for your time. And maybe next time you should also branch out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
All right.